Welcome to the LowCarbUSA podcast, where we seek to inspire you to help us build this community. I'm Doug Reynolds.
And this is Pam Devine.
This next episode is actually cut from my opening remarks from the Seattle event that was back a couple of months ago in May. And I had planned this whole introductory talk, but the night before we went out to dinner and we were talking with a couple of the speakers and vendors and that came to dinner with us that night. And we had literally 3 days before arrived back from an extended trip to Indonesia and Australia. And in Australia, we were visiting my family, and we had a very upsetting experience there with my family and our efforts to try and help them and teach them about this lifestyle, and they really needed it. And so that night at dinner, I was telling someone, I forget who I was talking to about it, but I was telling them the story, and I literally ended up in tears. And so it made me realize that it was maybe something that I needed to share with everyone else, with the people at the event. And so I shortened my official talk and kind of tagged this testimonial onto the end of that talk. So if you follow us on YouTube and you've listened to the recording of my opening remarks at the Seattle event, you will have heard this story. But for the rest of you, hopefully it resonates with some of you. And the experience that I had at the event was that so many people came to me afterwards and said, like, wow, this is exactly what I'm going through. And so it made me realize once again that people needed to hear this. And so hopefully it resonates with a lot of you.
Why am we doing this? And my personal testimonial about I wasn't sick, or at least I hadn't been tested. I was probably pre-diabetic, but I hadn't been tested, so I can't say that I was. But I had profound improvements and decided I didn't know what a ketone was until I was 50 years old. So how's that possible? So what can I do to try and help other people and learn about that and not get to 50 and not know what a ketone is? But my family is all in Australia now, okay, and that's kind of confusing because everybody thinks I'm from Australia and I'm not. I'm from South Africa. We have a lot of rivalry with Australia, especially on the sports field. So it's kind of it's not cool to call a South African an Australian. But now I tell them I'm going to visit my family in Australia, and then they really get confused. But my sister's been there for a long time. My folks moved there a couple of years ago, and last year in April, we went out there and it was the first time our whole family had been together for literally 25 years. And when I was growing up, I can't eat eggs. And I thought I was allergic to them because it made me really, really sick. But it turns out that I'm just, the smell and the flavor turns my stomach. And if anything's cooked with eggs and whatever, and you can make things with raw eggs, it's fine. As long as I can't taste the eggs and smell it, I'm fine. But it was a massive issue in our house from the time that I can remember when I was little until I was about 15 or 16, when I was big enough to say, I'm not eating another egg, and that was it, right? We got to Australia, and it was the afternoon, and we chatted a little bit, and we all went to bed, and we got up in the morning, and my mom got up, and she said, so, can I make you some eggs for breakfast? And I was really offended that she didn't remember this, right? And Pam was actually kind of embarrassed. I just reacted, and I yelled at her, don't you remember this? And it was wild for about half an hour, okay? The next morning, we got up, and she said, so, can I cook you some eggs for breakfast? And that was when I realized that we were in trouble. Okay? And through that whole stay, and now we've just came back last week from there again, and it's the same thing. She doesn't remember anything. From we have a conversation, and the next day it's like that conversation never happened. Okay? And I know that if she had to stop eating all this crap, that especially now that it's kind of the early onset of this, that I feel like we can almost guarantee that we'd eradicate it completely, but I can't say that for sure. But I know for sure that it would definitely improve greatly. And I've helped so many people, or I've been able to get through, or provide speakers that can get through to so many people here. People that want to listen. But when it's your own family, and we were talking about it yesterday when we were setting up, and we were joking and saying, you know, the first rule of keto is don't talk about keto. Because we've all had these amazing transformations in our lives, right? And all you want to do is tell everybody about it because you can't understand why they don't get it or they don't do it. But with my family, it's different, right? I've got to a point where if people don't want to listen, there's millions of people that do want to listen, so come back when you get it, right? And it doesn't offend me, but when it's my family, it's different. And I tried, we were there for 10 days this time, like every day we're having this conversation, but it's like Groundhog Day, right? So like every day we're having the conversation again. And a couple of days before we left, we had this conversation, and my mom was like serious, okay, like, you know, but I can't just give up all this sugar, like, I can't stop all of this stuff in one go. And so we have this 2-hour conversation about, okay, well, let's do it in stages. Give up one thing at a time, you know, and we talked about the whole thing. You don't have to do the whole thing in one shot. It's not like flick a switch, all right? And by the end of the conversation, we thought, okay, I've actually got through to her. I really thought I'd got through to her. The last night we went to my brother's place, and my sister-in-law is famous for her puddings and desserts and stuff that she makes. And so she brings this stuff out, and my mom's sitting there guzzling this stuff up and saying, you don't know what you're missing, Doug. And my sister's saying, well, Mom, you don't know what you're starting now, because it's the same, don't speak about keto thing. Like every day I'm saying, Mom, you got to stop eating this shit. But I think it was because it was the last day. I was getting on a plane the next day. And it made me realize that I didn't have any more days to have these conversations with her anymore. And I just said, no, I'm not missing anything. I don't want to get diabetes. and I even said, I don't want to get dementia. I literally wanted to stand up there and start screaming at her. I don't want to be like you. I want you to remember who I am next time I come back here. I don't want to be on the other side of the world and phone you and you don't know who you're talking to. That's what was going on in my head. But it's a family farewell last night. I couldn't do that, but I was holding onto the table like this. I was so, and it was angry is not the right word. I was just so frustrated and so sad. And I just went inside. And my brother came in and said, oh, what's wrong? And I said, Murray, seriously, Mom's got to stop eating this shit. And I can't get through to her. You've got to help me with this. What's even worse, I found out when we were going home, Pam told me that my sister-in-law, who made these famous cakes and puddings, I had a conversation with her. She's this skinny thing that runs and all of that. She's always been skinny. She just got diagnosed with pre-diabetes. Okay? And you know what her doctor told her? Now you're going to have to stop eating cheese. That was the advice from the doctor when he found out that she was pre-diabetic. It's like, I'm speechless. What do I do? Okay? So I come home and I put things like this on so that I can try and reach people that are at least open to listening. Okay? And a lot of you are medical practitioners. I'm really pleased about that because what you can learn here, you can disseminate to your colleagues and your patients. And that's bit by bit. I mean, 2 years ago, keto was not that well known. Now it's the most searched word or phrase or whatever in Google. So people are becoming aware of it now, and everybody's trying to monetize it and everything. We try and stick with the science and the education and make sure that people get the right information. And hopefully this is just one more step towards a better world one day. So I stole this from one of the Dr. Jacob Wilson, who speaks at quite a few of our events, and he always ends with this, and so I stole it from him. But the reason we do this is, if not us, then who's going to do it? And if not now, then when? Okay? We have to do it right now. That's gone blank. Does that mean I've run out of time? 10 minutes. 8 minutes. Okay. So just quickly, hopefully I can read this. Outside in the expo, the Nutrition Coalition is, I worked a lot with Nina Teicholz. She works tirelessly to try and get the guidelines changed. And I often say that I feel like as hard as she works, we don't know how long that's going to take before that changes. And we can't wait for the guidelines to change before we change what happens in medicine. We just can't. There's already millions of people who have died that shouldn't have died. And we need to stop that rot. Nina wrote a thing that got published in the Washington Post. Is it the Washington Post? So you guys can go and look it up when you get a chance. It's called "Diets Are Not One Size Fits All." So why do we treat the dietary guidelines like that? Okay. One of the paragraphs in that article says, nutrition-related diseases kill about 4,300 people daily, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The equivalent of nearly 11 jumbo jets crashing and killing every person on board every day. Where's the emergency expert panels, the headlines, the congressional outrage devoted to this massive, unparalleled public health crisis? The guidelines, whether through design or implementation, are clearly a failed policy. It's time to ground the planes and acknowledge this disaster. Independent experts with no vested interest in the status quo are urgently needed to rethink the problem. Okay? And Michael Wood is out there with the Nutrition Coalition thing, and you can have discussions about the advocacy efforts there in Washington to try and get these guidelines changed. But in the meantime, this is what we can do. We can sit here, we can learn about this, we can teach our friends about it, we can teach our colleagues about it, and we can take it to our patients. And as we do this and we participate in this community, we're going to be more and more protected by a community of people that all actually have a consensus on what this needs to be. We've got guidelines now that you can refer to. Let's go out and get this done.
So you'll notice that we haven't had any commercials at all during this podcast, and we intend to keep it like that if we possibly can. But at the same time, the work that we're doing and the efforts that we're going to get the clinical guidelines done, there's just so much to do. And in order to really, for this to be sustainable, we need your help. And so what we're asking you to do is go and take a look at our Patreon account. There's actually quite a few options there. It provides you with options to actually go onto our site, and there's membership options there where you can get access to all our video content and other perks of being a member, or even just $1 a month, become a patron. And you can find that in patreon.com/LowCarbUSA. I'll put it in the show notes and in the episode notes so that you can find it. yeah, help us to change the world.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people take a look at the conference registrations, and I think they immediately assume that, you know, from a distance, that these might be money-making endeavors that we're doing with these conferences. And, you know, it's hard to admit, and it's hard to tell people that we really aren't making any money from these. All 11 of the events that we've done have not been a profitable endeavor. We've literally had to dip into our credit, basically. It wasn't anything. It wasn't like we actually had a pocket to dip into and put money into. We've had to take loans and get a lot of credit for these events. So any little bit that you can help, every ticket that's sold, every little bit of $1 a month in a Patreon account will help us to fund our endeavors and fund the programs, so that we continue to do some of these other things that are free content. The project management that we're doing on the clinical guidelines will really go a long way.